Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video where I'd be talking about the ball poem written by John Berryman. I'd be dealing with the summary, detailed paraphrasing, theme, and the figures of speech used in the poem. So let's start right away. Let's talk a little about John Berryman. John Berryman was born on October 25th, 1914. He was an American poet. He was a major figure in the American poetry in the second half of the 20th century, and he is considered to be a key figure in the confessional school of poetry. His best-known work is the Dream Songs, which is a collection of over 340 poems. There's a very tragic side to his life. Berryman's father had shot himself when Berryman was just 11 years old. Berryman was haunted by his father's death for the rest of his life, and he wrote about his struggle to come to terms with it in much of his poetry. His poetry often revolves around the details of his personal problems as well. Berryman continued to struggle with depression throughout much of his life. And finally, on the morning of January 7th, 1972, this great poet killed himself by jumping from the Washington Avenue Bridge in Minneapolis onto the west bank of the Mississippi River. Let's have a reading of the ball poem. What is the boy now who has lost his ball? What is he to do? I saw it go merrily bouncing down the street, and then merrily over. There, it is in the water. No use to say, oh, there are other balls. An ultimate shaking grief fixes the boy as he stands rigid, trembling, staring down all his young days into the harbor where his ball went. I would not intrude on him. A dime, another ball is worthless. Now he senses his first responsibility in a world of possessions. People will take away balls. Balls will be lost always, little boy. And no one buys a ball back. Money is external. He is learning, well behind his desperate eyes, the epistemology of loss. How to stand up, knowing what every man must one day know and most know many days, how to stand up. Before going to the summary, let me make it clear that the ball poem originally has 25 lines. But we would be studying only up to line number 18 because NCERT has chosen those 18 lines for the curriculum. So, let's talk about the summary. The poet observes a boy playing with a ball. The boy suddenly loses his grip and the ball bounces away and falls into the water. The boy goes and looks down into the water and keeps standing there, rigid and shaking with grief, trying to look for the ball. The poet doesn't interfere because he believes that money or another ball will never be able to compensate for the lost ball. The boy now learns his first responsibility and experiences loss for the first time. At the same time, he has to learn to live with the loss. There will be more such losses in his life. He needs to learn a way to bear with the losses. He needs to learn how to stand up again. Let's talk a little about the vocabulary or the difficult words used in the poem. Desperate means having a great need or desire for something. Staring means looking. Dime. Dime in United States is a 10-cent coin, which is 1/10 of a US dollar. Epistemology means nature of knowledge itself. Let's start paraphrasing the poem. We'll begin with line number 1 to 4. These are the opening lines of the poem. The poet wonders what the boy would do now that the ball is lost. The poet was observing the boy who was playing with the ball. Suddenly, the boy loses his grip and the ball bounces away down the street and falls into the water. Now we would be talking about line number 5 to 9. The poet believes that consoling the boy by saying, "Oh, there are other balls," is useless because they aren't the same ball that he has lost. He might buy another ball, but the one he has lost cannot be retrieved. The boy goes to the harbor and stares down into the water to look for the ball. He stands rigid, shaking with grief. There are memories associated with the ball. The phrase, "staring down all his young days into the harbor," implies that he isn't just staring down at the ball, but he is staring down at everything that the ball stood for: his childhood, his innocence, and several other similar feelings. Now let's talk about line number 9 to line number 12. The poet says that he wouldn't intrude upon the boy. The boy needs solitude right now to take it all in. Giving the boy some money or another ball is useless. The new ball would never bring back the deep emotional attachment that the boy had with his ball. The boy senses his first responsibility in this world of possessions. In this materialistic world, people always want to own more and more. They want to increase their possessions. This ball was the possession, the responsibility of the boy, and he has lost it. He experiences his first failure in taking care of his responsibility. Let's move on to line number 12 to line number 14. Here, the word balls stands for possession. Loss of possession might mean the loss of something or someone very close to us. The poet says that there are people who would want to take away his possessions. Possessions will be lost from time to time. It's the same with people whom we hold very close, very dear to our heart. They would die. They would pass away or go away from us throughout our lives, and we have to experience it. We have to bear with it. Nothing lasts forever. Things, people, all are perishable. Money is just an external factor. It can buy luxuries, but it can't buy happiness. Money can't bring things or people back. With this, we come to the last few lines of our poem. The poet says that the eyes of the boy look desperate. He badly wants his ball back. But now he is learning the nature of loss. He is learning that it's futile to lament over lost possessions. He is learning how to overcome the pain of loss and separation, and how to take control of his emotions, how to stand again and get on with his life. Loss and separation is a hard reality of life that everyone must come to terms with someday or the other. And this boy has understood it today. Let's talk about the theme of the poem. The poem deals with loss and separation. As we have already discussed, John Berryman was deeply disturbed all his life because of his father's untimely death. And almost all his works mirror the suffering he had to go through to come to terms with his father's untimely death. The ball in this poem is the metaphor for everything that we think is irreplaceable in our lives. It may also be a person we hold dear to our heart. Loss of a loved one can spell a period of intense grief and depression for some of us. The poet's message is that life goes on, despite the death of our loved ones. As we grow older, we become more and more accustomed to seeing our loved ones die. We learn how to deal with such a loss and to move on. Death may grieve us or cause us to feel depressed, but sooner or later, we must overcome those feelings and start living our normal lives again. Now let's discuss all the figures of speech used in this poem. Rhyme scheme. The entire poem has been written in free verse. There is no set rhyme scheme. Now what's free verse? Free verse is a literary device that can be defined as poetry that is free from the limitations of regular meter or rhythm, and it also does not have a rhyme with fixed forms. Such poems do not follow regular rhyme scheme rules, yet they succeed in providing an artistic expression. However, it still allows poets to use alliteration, repetition, enjambment, metaphors, and several other rhetoric figures to get the effects that they consider are suitable for the poem. Let's talk about alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of the same sound in consecutive or alternate words. Here in this poem, the H sound has been repeated in the first line. Who has his? Here, in line number 5 to 13, you will find that the F sound has been repeated in the sixth line. Grief fixes. The ing sound has been repeated in the seventh line. Trembling, staring. T sound has also been repeated as he stands rigid, trembling, staring down. And in the 13th line, the sound of L has been repeated. Hence, these are all examples of alliteration. Balls. Balls will be lost always, little boy. With this, we come to the last few lines. You can see here that the B sound in 14th number line, buys a ball back. Here the B sound has been repeated, and in the second last line, M sound has been repeated. The sound of M has been repeated. Man must. With this we come to enjambment, which is quite common to almost all the poems. Enjambment means moving over from one line to another without a terminating punctuation mark. It can be defined as a thought or sense, phrase or clause in a line of poetry that does not come to end at the line break, but moves over to the next line. Here, in line number 1 to 4, we can clearly see that the second and third line has used the device of enjambment. In line number 5 to 13, there are several lines which have used enjambment. You can see here for yourself. All these lines do not end with a punctuation mark. In the last few lines, you can see that the second last line and the third last line use the device of enjambment. And that's all about enjambment. Let's move forward. Anaphora. Now what's anaphora? Anaphora is the repetition of a word or a phrase at the beginning of successive lines. Here, in these lines, you can clearly see that the phrase "what is" has been repeated in the first and the second line, in the beginning of the first and the second line. And the word "merrily" has also been repeated in the third and the fourth lines. Hence, it's anaphora. Repetition. Now what's repetition? Repetition is a literary device that repeats the same words or phrases a few times to make an idea clearer and more memorable. In line number 2, the word "what" has been repeated. In line number 13 also, the word "balls" has been repeated. Personification, a very common one in all the poems. Personification is a figure of speech in which a thing, an idea, or an animal is given human attributes. The non-human objects are portrayed in such a way that we feel that they have the ability to act like human beings. In these lines, you can see that it has been said that the ball is bouncing merrily. The ball is seen bouncing merrily, which is a human attribute. Only human beings can act merrily, but here a ball is acting merrily. The ball is bouncing merrily, so it's personification. Let's talk about metaphor now. Metaphor is a figure of speech in which an implicit or indirect comparison is made between two dissimilar objects. Here in these lines, you can see that the poet has used the device of metaphor in the 8th line when he compares the boy's young days or his childhood with the lost ball. All his young days into the harbor, actually he is staring down at the ball, whereas the poet makes an indirect comparison between the ball and the childhood, the innocence of the boy. Let's talk about transferred epithet. Transferred epithet is used when an emotion is attributed to a non-living thing after being displaced from a person, most often the writer or the poet himself or herself. Epithet basically means an adjective, a word which talks about the quality of someone. And when that adjective is taken from the person and applied to some other object, when the epithet is transferred from the person to an object, that is transferred epithet. For example, the girl kept tossing and turning on her restless pillow all night. Here, the pillow isn't actually restless. The girl is restless. But the epithet restless has been taken away from the girl and it has been transferred to the pillow. And hence, it's transferred epithet. In this poem also, there's the word desperate eyes. It's a phrase basically. But it's not the eyes of the boy which is sad or desperate. But the boy himself is sad. And his eyes are just expressing that emotion on his face. The boy is desperate, the eyes are not. The eyes are just expressing that emotion. And hence, the epithet desperate has been taken away from the boy and has been applied to the word eyes. So it's a transferred epithet. Asyndeton. Asyndeton is derived from the Greek word asyndeton, which means unconnected. It is a stylistic device used in literature and poetry to intentionally eliminate conjunctions between phrases and in sentences. Yet, even after eliminating conjunction, they maintain grammatical accuracy. Here in line number 10, you would find a dime, another ball is worthless. Some conjunction is missing, yet the grammar of the sentence is accurate. So it's asyndeton. And that brings us to symbolism. It's a unique thing that a poet has used a thing as simple as a ball as a symbol for possession, some close person, or anything that we hold close to our heart. And the loss of the ball symbolizes their death or their separation from us. In these lines, people will take away balls, balls will be lost always. Balls symbolize possessions. It can also mean some close person, some person who is very close to us. And that's the end of our video. If you have any questions, do ask in the comment box. I'd be happy to answer them. If you want any other videos of any other topic, please let me know. I'll try to work and upload them as soon as possible. If you like this video, please give a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.